the time we say, store up treasures in heaven. Well, what does that mean? Preacher, how do I store up treasures in heaven? Well, I'm a pretty simple guy. The way I understand it, if you want to store up treasures in heaven, the way you store up treasures in heaven is you invest in people that's going there. You plant your seed in people that's going to heaven. And then what does that mean? Well, that means when you come to church, you give God His tithe. You return to God His tithe. It's not giving Him anything. You return God His tithe, and then you give an offering. Why? Because as the church goes out and does the mission of the church and spreads the gospel, and people are saved, those people that are saved go to heaven. And guess what they carry with them? Your investment. You know, you invest in missionaries and mission work, and you give them your money and your time, and then when they go out and spread the gospel, those people who hear the gospel and are saved, they go to heaven and they take with them your investment. You help to meet needs like we have for the children's home this morning. You see needs in the community, and you minister the love of Jesus Christ to people so that when somebody comes to them with the gospel, they're receptive because they've seen the love of Christ in action, and they're willing to hear the gospel, and they get saved, and they go to heaven, and they take your investment. Listen, everybody wants something to invest that has great returns, right? You know, some people want to invest in the stock market, some buy CDs, some do this. I'm telling you, those things, as we've seen in the last several years, those things go up and down. You can be a millionaire one day and broke the next if you invest in that. But let me tell you, God's way of doing economics never has a downturn. There's never a lean year in God's economy. You invest in the kingdom, and you can know you're always going to get a good return. My question this morning, which way are you living? Believers should have an entirely different set of priorities from unbelievers. How have you invested in eternity? What have you sent up? How have you invested in those that have gone before you? What does the evidence of your life spell out? And it matters because look at verse 21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's another one of those verses we usually run by. Boy, there's a lot there. Where your treasure is, your heart will be also. So if you invest in hoarding things up, that means your treasure is earthly things. So that means your heart is going to be on earthly things. That means your heart's going to be filled with anger and frustration and worry and grief and sadness and all the things that earthly things are filled with. But if you send your investments to heaven, if you invest in heaven, if you help out instead of hoarding up, then your treasure is in heaven and your heart's going to be filled with heavenly things like joy and peace and happiness and all the things that only come from God Almighty. You've got a choice in that. There's so many things in life you have no control over. Here's one you can handle. You get to decide whether your heart is filled with anger and frustration or your heart is filled with joy and peace. You make that decision based on how you live. For where your treasure is,